What's up, movie lovers? Welcome to Ready Play Movies. I believe this is episode 39. I'm not sure. I don't have a doc in front of me. I'm a little bit out of sorts. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna go off the cuff. I'm not reading a script. I'm not doing anything here. I'm just sort of just vibing. Yeah, we're
Yeah, I can confirm this is episode 39. By the way,
okay.
I just looked up. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, this would have been the episode that would have dropped on Tuesday, October 5th. However, I'm putting this out on Friday, October 8th because I am a bitch. I can confirm that that is a true statement.
You sure use that word a lot, by the way.
Oh yeah, over here on the right side of me on the screen is my guest, Mr. Daniel Lima.
Hello, everybody. I've been in
Yes.
here a few times.
Yes, of course. You're. I think Dallas might have you beat, so I think he's still technically the returning champ. But whatever, it's
Mm.
okay. It's all right. I don't even know. I don't know the count. So between both the
I
for,
did I did the episode with you once, then I did the one with my sister, and then this would be my third. I think.
I think it's
'Cause I think
fourth.
this
I
would be
think
my
you've done
third.
it twice.
Fourth.
Plus
Oh, okay.
plus. So I don't know.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know. But I think Dallas might be three times. I don't know. But whatever. Who knows? Who knows? I don't know who's keeping count. Doesn't matter. All right.
Not you.
Nah.
Not you for sure.
So yeah, this is a different Ready Play Movies episode here. We're not doing the typical format where we do like segment news extra news, all that stuff. Check this out. All that stuff is just being thrown out the window for this week. I was gonna do the episode this week, but then so basically what happening is I'll just sort of just put this out there. I didn't put out post this week because Troy he had to work and he's out of town, so we couldn't record together, and I couldn't find a guest to record the show with. As far as it was probably gonna be a one man show, like a one man podcast. But then Dan, saved me from a monologue, and he volunteered
Now,
to do something different.
did I save you or did I save the audience? Is the question.
What's kind of interesting is I watch a movie podcast. I don't know if I want to say his name, but I don't say I watch. I would say I used to watch more than I say I currently do watch. I used to watch a
Hmm.
movie podcast, and it was a one man podcast, and it was very entertaining. He's very engaging, and he has such
Yeah.
a big following that it's like he's talking to you, and he's that kind of stuff. Like
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
has enough audience interaction to basically what do you call it, give the facade of a conversation. Whereas if I
Right.
were to talk, since I don't have anyone talking back to me, then it doesn't quite work. I don't know.
Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, there are people out there that can pull off a one man show really well. I used to listen to the Dan Carling podcast, and he was very good. He used to do these shows about like politics and stuff, and it was just very entertaining, despite the fact that it was a one man show. And he kind of stopped doing those. Now he just does hardcore history, which a lot of people love, but I can't get into that one because it's just like each episode is like 4 hours of history or something, and I am not as much of a history buff, and so I can't get into that one specifically. But yeah, I've enjoyed one man shows in the past before. It takes a certain kind of personality to be able to pull that off. Which I'm not saying you don't have, by the way. You very well might. I never heard you do it, so I don't know if you have what it takes. And probably takes a lot of practice too, actually.
Yeah, yeah. Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll be awkward, maybe. Who knows? Because
Yeah.
I'm trying to get a guest for this coming Monday, and they haven't confirmed if they can make it or not. Because if they can't, then it's gonna be a one man show for next week because Troy's actually out of town for 2 weeks. So, and then what's kind of
You
funny
know,
is when Troy gets back from town, I'm gonna be going out of town because I'm going on my vacation. So it's like
oh
I gotta
shit. So
I
that's
gotta
gonna be
pre-record
difficult.
something. I gotta pre-record something
Yeah.
for that too. So, but anyways, yeah. So as far as what we're doing today here is actually we're gonna do, as you guys can see in the title, we're doing a spoiler cast, and we're gonna. So if you guys don't know, we're Squid Game is a show that's blowing up on Netflix. It's gotten really big. We talked about it on Netflix and Chill. If you watch the show for these past couple weeks, where we do the charts, it's number one on trending for 3 weeks in a row. Actually, I think 3 weeks. I think. Or no, wait. It was number two because people were talking about it, and then it rose up to number one, and it stayed at number one for 2 weeks in a row. That's what it was. Squid Game is a very crazy ass show, and I actually know a lot about it because not only did I watch it, but I learned a lot of. I've seen many a YouTube breakdown about it, so we're gonna talk about that. And if you guys have not watched Squid Game, you guys are more than welcome to watch the beginning of this podcast because the first part is going to be spoiler cast. I'm sorry, spoiler free. Excuse me. And then the second part, where we'll give you like a clear delineation, is that going forward, we'll be talking about all the spoilers and we'll be going into the nitty gritty. I expect this to be the shortest episode of Ready Play Movies. We've been averaging about 2 hours a pop. I'm expecting this to go for 1 hour, maybe 30 minutes, somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour, somewhere in there. And who knows? We'll see. And Dan, I'll go ahead and give you the opening statement. What are your thoughts about Squid Game? How did you figure? How did you find out about it? Was it through my show? Please tell me it was through my show.
Uh, it actually was not, and the funny thing is, I'm one episode behind now, but I've listened most of the other episodes, and if you guys mentioned it before, I probably heard it, but didn't like fully process it strongly. Maybe none of you guys were watching it yet, but it wasn't until like when everybody's talking about something and then you can't quite tell like where you heard about it from, but just at some point you're like, okay, the world is talking about this, right?
Yes.
Like you're just gonna get that feeling like, okay, the world is talking about this now, and you feel like you've heard it from everywhere, so it's hard to pinpoint where it came from. But yeah, it was this last over the last week that Lee and I kind of looked at each other and we're like, dude, this the Squid Game thing, I guess we gotta watch that, right? Like because everybody's talking about it. I think she was the one actually that was like, hey, do you want to watch Squid Game? And I said, oh, you know what, I keep hearing about that, so sure, let's give it a try, let's check it out. And this show, Lewis, I have a lot of mixed feelings about it, to be completely honest. But there's one thing I
Wow.
want to say: once you start it, it's hard to put down.
Yes.
Once you start it, it's hard to put down. It's one of those shows. Like there's cliffhangers after cliffhangers. You want to see what's going to happen next. There's just so much tension. It grabs your attention. The show commands your attention for the full time. It is a Korean show, by the way. I watched it with English subtitles, which I didn't know about before I started. I'm a subtitle person, original audio subtitles. That's how I like to watch my stuff. And I enjoyed it. I think everybody should watch it. We might get into some nitpicks or criticism from my part, at least later on in the show. But just in general, I think this show is an experience. I think it's seems to be the one of the big shows of the year. So I think if you're just looking for something to watch on Netflix, definitely give this a try. Now, I do almost want to give people like trigger warnings a little bit. Like just keep in mind, like this is not your run of the mill family show. Okay, this is pretty intense. This is a mature show intended for mature audiences. It gets pretty dark at times. It can get a little gory. So just kind of keep that in your head if you're going to jump into this. If you're overly sensitive about some of this stuff, then maybe not for you.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind.
It's overly violent, but it's not gratuitous. I mean, it's gratuitous, but not like Saw gratuitous, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
it makes
definitely.
sense, is how I would put it.
Right.
Shot very tastefully. Yeah, there's so much to say. Like there's a lot to say about the show. Um, okay, so without giving like too much away about what it's about, I just sort of want to talk about some of the research that I saw like um, behind the scenes
It's
stuff.
about Splatoon, like Squid Game.
Yes, exactly. It's just about, yes, they're all playing Splatoon, a live action Splatoon. But anyways, so yeah, the Korean cinema has been on the rise as of late.
hmm
And when we talked about like the Academy Award winning movie Parasite, that came from South Korea as well.
That
So
movie's so good, by the way.
yes, it is
I
so
really like
good.
that movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's kind of interesting that like between that and like a lot of other like recent Korean stuff, like it's sort of been elevating to like this echelon where it's kind of like becoming a bit of a Hollywood over there. And
hmm
so I think it's really interesting that Netflix, with all of their I don't know purchasing power, that they can just greenlight this. And so, by the way,
hmm
normally when I would think of a Netflix original that's foreign, I just thought that they put everything under a Netflix original banner when it's not made by
hmm
Netflix. So a movie would be made in like Spain or whatever, or in France, and it would be made by a company there. And then they just sold the rights. They just sold the international distribution to Netflix. It wasn't commissioned by Netflix. It was just sold to Netflix, and they just put it under the Netflix original banner. This show is not that. This show was green lit and produced by Netflix. Like Netflix actually reached out
Mm,
to this team or whatever, or the team reached out to Netflix. They made a deal and they actually greenlit this. So this was always shot and recorded with the intention of being an international like release on Netflix with being dubbed and or like like kind of stuff like or not dubbed. Like actually, there is an English dub. I didn't turn that on. I just fuck that. I want to stick with the original audio. But it's kind of interesting that like Netflix, the company, believed in the creators so much that they specifically allowed them to
right.
make the movie or make the show how they intended and distribute it that way. So
And
just throwing that out
and
there.
the showrunner for it, I saw some tweets going around about how he was actually trying to get his script picked up for like over 10 years
Yeah,
and struggling with money and stuff. And then when it finally did and the show finally came out, he probably made a lot of money, I would assume, because with it being number one on Netflix, he better have, right?
yeah.
And it becoming this huge sensation. Now, you mentioned something interesting, Louis, about how you said Korean is on the rise, right? I have a question for you. Do you think Korean cinema is on the rise and growing and getting better, or is it that we're just now paying attention to it? Meaning, could it be that it was always this good, but we just didn't pay attention? Because honestly, historically, I feel like the United States doesn't really pay attention to foreign language stuff in the same
Yes.
way that other countries do.
I think streaming is like a huge benefit to that. I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's one of those kind of things that like it sort of like breaks down the barriers. Because when I think about like foreign movies and stuff like that, there was like a Korean movie that I watched back in like 2005 that was amazing, but no one ever heard about. And
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of interesting because like you don't see those kind of movies play in like theaters like nationwide like a wide release. It's like they're very few and far between. Like not every movie can be Life is Beautiful, which is a foreign language film, but like like they
Right.
tend to go under the radar. So yeah, I think it's a situation where it's like there's no cost to distribute a movie over Netflix, whereas you have to
Right.
like uh, what is it called? There's a promotional cost and everything to put something in theaters. So I think that
Right.
that's
Right.
it's an interesting thing. Like I think that's what it is. Maybe it's always been that good. I mean, hell, like I said, like there was like a movie that one of my favorite movies that I was gonna do a sharing the love at some point in the future was a movie called Taeguk G, which is a Korean movie about the Korean War, about North versus South
Right.
Korea. It was like a fictional movie, but it was set in this real world backdrop that's like crazy good. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think it's interesting. I think that that is almost the topic of the show in of itself. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, it's just cool to think that I think the rise of the streaming platforms are making it so that more people all across the world can now consume the best content from all across the world. Because in general, I wouldn't argue, for instance, that Brazil, where I come from, that we had phenomenal cinema compared to Hollywood. I don't think we would even come close to that. In fact, a lot of Brazilian movies just didn't really hit for me. Like I watched a lot of Brazilian movies growing up. I still watch them. Over the last few years, I've watched a few, but a lot of them, they never felt like it was the same. Obviously, never the same budget, really, and so that kind of shows on the quality of the content a lot of times. But there's been a few exceptional Brazilian movies that are probably worth watching by everybody, around the globe. Just like there are, I'm sure, plenty of exceptional Korean movies and Spanish movies and maybe African movies and everything else. Like there's people making movies all over the place. So I like the idea that Netflix now allows us, and Netflix and other streaming services now allow us to experience, not just the best of America and the UK and maybe Australia, but also the best of, Europe and the best of Asia and all that other stuff. So I'm very excited for the future in that sense of seeing more things like this.
Yeah, I just think that it's I don't know if it's a situation where like anime's popularity has allowed for people to be okay with watching stuff in subtitles. You know what I mean?
Right, right, right.
Like
Yeah.
I think it's like even like with someone I talk about my nephew, like he's like 18 years old right now, and it's like a huge big deal to be bothered to watch something in subtitles. You know what I mean? So I
Hmm.
think there's like an interesting like little like culture thing that's being permeated through where it's like you got to get used to it or whatever. Because like I think with him, like with young people, you tend to have a situation where if you watch something with subtitles, you have to pay attention. You can't look away. You can't be on your phone while watching a movie passively. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I love that about it, actually, and it's funny. I grew up watching American movies with subtitles, and because of that, I feel like where I come from, the culture is almost like you're a baby to complain about subtitles. You know what I mean? Like it's just people just kind of accept that. That's just what it is. Like and dubbing is pretty big, and people watch dub movies too. And there's people that prefer it, but just in general, like I feel like culturally, at least amongst the people that I grew up around, that generally, after you reach a certain age, like after you're like a teenager, like you want to watch stuff on subtitles because it's almost like you want to be cool. Like you don't want to be the person that's watching it with like the fake like audio that was put on top of it. Have Leonardo DiCaprio speak with this random person's voice. Like you want to see the original, like what it was like. It feels more like you feel more cultured like
Yeah.
doing that, right? Like whether that's fair or not, maybe not, but because of that, it's just normal to me, and I'm always surprised when I meet people here where they're like, I don't watch stuff with subtitles. I'm like, dude, like you're missing out on so much, It's like just get over it, That's really how I feel. But I feel like we're going on tangents here.
Yeah.
Maybe we should just kind of give a synopsis of the show too, because we haven't really told people about what it is, have we?
Yeah, exactly. We just kind of sort of danced around it a lot. So I don't know how to explain what the show is without going into spoilers. Like the first thing I want to do is spoil the first episode when I talk when I talk about the show,
Yeah.
which I think is
I feel,
a fair spoiler is the first episode.
yeah.
Because
No,
not
I
only is
agree.
it give you the premise, but it also is what they led with in the trailers. If you
Right,
ever watched the
right.
trailers.
I feel like it's one of those shows where like the least you know might be best, but I feel like it's not a problem to know that this is about a Hunger Games battle royale kind of situation where you have plenty of people fighting for a prize, and it will involve them like they will die in the process of trying to get that prize. And so I think that's kind of it. Like I don't know like what else we can give away to, but that's how I would put it to somebody. It's like if you like the premise of Hunger Games, then it's a similar premise but with a slightly different setting and and etc. But yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's they play children's games, like things that you would play in elementary school as
Yeah.
as the game that you have to play. I'll just go ahead and just spoil just the first episode just to give you an idea. Everyone knows what red light, green light is. Like I played it as a
Hmm.
kid, so they just played red light, green light for the first round, and games of that ilk
Hmm.
to get establish, who would be the ultimate winner. And
Yeah.
it's a total of 6 games to play it over, like I think about 6 days that they were supposed to do, and then yeah, they just have to deal with like this game this show has like so much like metaphors like in metaphors on metaphors on metaphors as far as like
Hmm.
classism and like the desperation and all this like stuff that they like talk about as far as like what is cruel, what is fair, and all that other stuff. There's a lot that they sort of chime in on, and the show
Hmm.
is very interesting. I liked it. It's got like it's got the visceral entertainment factor going for it, as well as like
Hmm.
a deep like pontification about the human condition, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great way to put it, and I feel like that puts it in a perfect place to get into spoiler territory, if you will.
Yes,
Yeah.
I see. That's perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good wrap up thought right there. It's just like just if you like any of the things that we said, um, then yes, definitely check out Squid Game. Obviously, with it being number one on Netflix, you probably already have, assumingly. And then also, one last thing before we move on to spoilers, I'm gonna go ahead and just say 9.5 out of 10. Let's go with that.
Dang. Dang.
What about you?
I don't know. I really don't know if I would know how to rank it, because I feel like I definitely wouldn't rank it that high actually.
You wouldn't even put it in 9 out of
But
10 because I feel like it's amazing. Like,
I all right. Well, we'll get into it. I have no idea how to rank it. I've been thinking about it because I just finished the show I think like yesterday.
yes, me too.
And I don't know. I'm
All
very
right,
conflicted about it.
all right.
I
Well, how
could
about
go
this?
like either way. Yeah.
Well, we'll just go ahead and say it's a recommendation from Dan as well. I'll say that. Yeah,
Yes, I
positive.
recommend it. I
I
recommend
recommend
it.
it,
Yes.
and then we'll go into spoiler talk. And I guess as we like sort of like go over our thoughts, we can sort of
Try to figure it out.
maybe figure it out,
Yeah.
like have a clarity and stuff like that. Like
Hmm.
okay, so spoilers from here on out. Here we go.
Hmm.
All right, so what do you want to start with? Do you want to do like a play by play of like the games and like sort of like establish a lot of like the tone or?
So I think a good way to start is like to think about the show really, and the show starts with this character, and I don't know if I want to be saying people's names because I feel like I'm gonna butcher everything, but the main character of the show I found very unlikable in the beginning. I found him like I didn't really find him relatable. I feel like they were trying to like be like, oh, like here's at some point like you do find him relatable, but at least in the beginning I was like this dude just seems like an ass. Like he's taking advantage of his mother. He's not taking care of himself. He's on all this debt. He's not really taking care of his daughter. Like there's this dude is in a really fucked place in his life. You can tell that a lot of things went wrong for him. But he wasn't a character that I rooted for in the beginning. To be completely honest with you, I couldn't find myself really liking him. I was just like, like this dude is just annoying, and I feel like it comes across like he earned the place that he's at in his life in a lot of ways, and I feel like that was not what the ultimate message of the show was truly about. And the one thing about this that I want to spin as a positive is that the way that character starts the show just highlights how much development he goes through when you look at the way that he ends the show. And I feel like so one of the negative points of the show for me is that initially I couldn't get behind the character and I struggled to get past that wall. But by the end, I realized that they actually did a really good job of developing the character and making the character grow throughout the story.
Yeah, like I think it's really interesting that he was he kind of sucks. Like you kind of just sort of see what he
Yeah.
is, but you don't actually get the character development of his backstory until later on. Specifically with episode 2 when they get
Hmm.
off the island, but also like later on where they're like when he's talking to the old man about the strike, about how what he lived through and what he saw and the trauma he was feeling and why he sort of just kind of checked out on life. You kind of sort of get
Hmm.
a feel for who he is, and I think the games sort of brought out the best in him in the sense of, he sort of like learned his true character inside, and where
Right.
he's not willing to sort of break from his moral compass, but also he gets tested as well. He even breaks his own moral code, and he starts to like deceive somebody when he knows he's wrong, but when he's back against the wall, he just sort of knows where he truly stands. But even then, even after where he fucked up, he still gets back on his high horse because he knows he needs to do better. So
Right. Right. Right.
yeah,
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting that slowly throughout the show you get to see his morals, and one of my issues was that I felt like they almost seemed to be inconsistent with the morals they seemed to have in the beginning of the show. But I feel like that really it is about that development and in him kind of finding his best self throughout the development of the show, while other characters revealed their worst selves throughout the show. And these stories tend to it's a common theme for these kinds of stories where in moments of distress and disaster and just desperation, that a lot of times people tend to regress to their more animalistic instincts and you know kill or be killed, like that kind of stuff, right? um Now if you want to stay with the first episode, when they actually get into the game, the first game that they played, you said earlier, red light, green light, and that's when they all find out that the penalty basically to breaking the rules of the game, to failing at the game, is death, that they get immediately shot. And that's what establishes the stakes for the rest of the show. So what do you think of that? Just like the establishing of the stakes, like just being in that spot of the show, I guess.
I just think that it's kind of fucked up that they didn't really like. I've seen many a YouTube video breaking down like of whether or not that this was ethical. Like like
Hmm.
if the guy behind the, I guess spoilers, I guess the number one, since he's behind the whole thing, like
Yeah.
if he's a shitty guy for doing what he did or whatever, and then he was
My
basically,
my my
oh, go for it.
my belief is that he is a shitty guy and that it's not ethical, because I think I was almost upset that they tried to spin it in the end as like, oh, like, maybe he had a point. Because, like,
Yeah.
no, fuck that. Like, those people did not sign up to get killed. Now, here's the thing. There is an argument to be made here because of a very interesting choice they made on the show that totally caught me off guard and I could never have seen coming, which is the fact that they let them go and then they come back. The participants of this game, after they find out that their lives are on the line, they are able they do a thing where they're able to get home and then choose to come back if they want to, and the majority of them come back.
Like
So there
93% of
is,
them.
yeah, so there's a point there. From that
Yes.
point on, I can see the point. However, there were 200 people that died in the very first game that were not given that choice. They only signed up to play a game. It's like, oh, you signed up here. It's like, oh, you hit I agree on like Facebook, so now we can do whatever the fuck on the Facebook like terms of service. So now we can fucking murder you. No,
Yeah.
so that's where I got really upset. Like, the people that died in that very first game
Didn't have a
did not
choice.
sign up for that and did not have a choice, and that is not fair.
But everyone from
And
there on out did. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I can see the argument just from like the I guess it was like the second episode, like the
Yeah.
second episode onward, but I don't think the argument applies to the whole thing because of that, especially. Um,
Well, like
Go ahead.
there's like I've been seeing like a little bit of like think pieces about him, about the old man's character, like as
Hmm.
far as like making an argument for in favor of him.
Hmm.
Like for instance, if he were since it was a complete like 50-50, like 100 to 100 votes split, on the very first episode where they were like, or yeah, it's the second episode when they're finally like, oh, what the fuck are we doing, kind of thing. When they were split down the middle, and he was the deciding vote, like he player number one was the deciding vote. He decided, instead of being a fucking bloodthirsty hound, he decides to vote no. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
that's good. Like he truly wanted to. I think he just wanted to have a good conscience. You know what I mean? Like I think
Right.
that's a good thing on his part. But I'm pretty sure there's a high probability that they would have told them if that they were gonna die if one of them bothered to ask what does eliminated mean. There's a high probability.
Right.
I think there's enough to warrant like about how their code is, about how fair they are, like how much they believe in like equality of out, like that kind of stuff. Like no what do you call it? Like no weighing, like no, like what do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? Like don't do unfavorable conditions to
They
anyone.
yeah they not interfering, right?
Yeah, there's enough.
Now,
There's enough to say that there's a possibility that that would have been the case if somebody asked what happens when you're eliminated. That kind of stuff.
here's where here's where the show really shines, is that it does spark a lot of these conversations after you're done with it, possibly. But here's my other point about this, and like what my think piece on the show is that I don't think the games were truly fair. And I thought, like, my interpretation of it is that the fair argument is bullshit, because there's one game that I think best exemplifies this, which is the game where they got to walk through glass. Because in that game, there's no, you can't argue that there's fairness in that game, because the people that just purely out of luck ended up being the ones at the bottom of the list because they picked the codes with the highest numbers, are, or the vest with the highest numbers, are the only ones that have a chance of going through it. There is no reasonable way that you can argue that the person that was first in line had as much of a chance of winning that game as the person that was last in line. So to me, that game was so interesting, and I feel like it was intentionally done this way because that game represents the fact that the whole fairness conversation was not really true at all. It was just a facade for them really just wanting to toy with these people's lives. Because if it was fair, they wouldn't have set up a game like that. You can argue that a lot of the other games are, perhaps, but if you think about it, with the with the honeycomb game, right, where they had to get the thing out of the cookie, like that one too, the random choice of which symbol they picked also determined the difficulty they had in that game. So there's an argument that, like, hey, out there, the real world, the argument for the game runners being good is that, hey, the real world is shitty, the real world is not fair, because the people that are successful out of, like, they're already wealthy, they're already born wealthy, or maybe they're lucky or whatever. It's not a fair world. Over here, everything's fair. Well, I think that argument falls flat because all of the games had some level of luck involved, and some of them were 99% luck and like very little about the skills.
You're right. You're right. I'll give you that one, especially with how
Hmm.
like the game runners. The more to your point, the game runners like rigged the game, the glass game. Whenever the guy, there was four people left, and the guy could tell the difference by the
Yeah.
refraction of the glass, and he was able to like, oh well, let's turn off
Hmm.
these lights so we can fuck him. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah.
that kind of sucks. You know what I mean? And you know what? There the guy, the gangster guy, he almost had ideas like, I'm not taking a step, you go first before me, that kind of stuff. I think that was actually there was some interesting dynamics where like maybe there could have been a way to I don't know, like feel it out. Like
To game it,
there was a
right?
part of me that
Um,
almost wanted to say
yeah.
like I wonder if like how well you could like walk on the beams instead of the glass. If you can balance yourself on the beams, could you avoid
Hmm.
still like cracking the glass or whatever, that you don't just fall over? You know what I mean? I wonder how the game makers would have like
Right.
tried to fuck you, like no, fuck you, you're dying, kind of stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, it actually made me think of I watched the Saw movies, and I think I watched some of them like all the way back in the day, so I don't really remember them that well, but I remember there was a plot line at some point about how there were like there were different people in different movies that ran the games, basically, that set up the traps and everything. And at some point there was a character that was setting up the traps where he just wanted people to die, so he didn't even give them a chance to really live, or he made it very unlikely that they would escape it, and that was the plot line of one of the movies.
Yeah, it was.
And
I
with
believe it was like the third Saw movie or the fourth Saw movie, because he had a disciple and it was a woman, and she just wanted to
Yes.
kill, and uh, and
Yeah,
then he got
exactly.
mad at her. It's like you don't get to just kill. You have to give him an out. And the guy, there was a guy that did the thing. Was like, all right, here's the condition to win, to get out alive. The guy like crushes his hands to get out, but then it doesn't let him out. And it kills him anyways. That's what ended up happening.
Right, right,
Yeah,
right, right. Yeah, that's remembered. So I think there's like almost like a parallel here, which is like maybe at some point the games were created with the idea of being this fair competition, despite despite in this twisted, obviously gruesome way, but this fair competition where they all actually have an equal chance of succeeding. But the truth is that at least in the current times that we follow through with the show, there isn't. The game runners are really just fucking around, and just trying to get them all killed, except for one, as we get to see in the end, right?
yeah.
um I don't know if you want to remain in this point, but if you don't, another thing we can do is talk about the other main characters of the show too.
I actually kind of wanted to talk about the games themselves. Like
Oh yeah.
the games themselves, is in the sense that like the first two games were very innocent. Like
Right.
in the sense that your actions of how you play in the game doesn't affect of whether the next person next to you dies. Like if you think
Right.
about like
Right.
red light, green light, you know, as many people can cross the finish line will win. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like if people didn't like panic as much or like try to run away, that they could have actually like more people could have lived. You know what I mean? Like you just
Hmm.
do red light, green light, you don't get eliminated, you're good.
Hmm.
And I think that with that one and with the cookie game where you have to cut out the shapes, whether or not you succeed, it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't kill someone else. And then the
Right.
third game is the very first time where your winning kills someone else. That's when shit
Right.
really truly got real, because in order to win tug of war, you have to pull somebody else to their death.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think that that's an interesting like little thing, and I kind of a part of me would have liked to have seen how if the old man team, the one with the user strategy, if they could have truly beat the gangsters, the evil villainous gangster guy with
Oh
his
yeah.
team, like that would have been an
Yeah.
interesting matchup. But
Yeah, they probably would have, but I knew that that was not gonna happen, because you could tell, like, this is also the kind of show where you could kind of tell from the beginning with the characters that they highlighted, where it's like, okay, these are the ones that are gonna be alive at the end. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like
these are the ones
these
that
are
have
the
plot
ones,
armor.
yeah, exactly, that like stand out a little more. So I knew that they were not really gonna pit them against each other until they did on, I think it was the fourth game, where we're getting closer when we're getting closer to the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was the games are very creative, by the way. The way that they set them up, the way that they took these kids games and turned them into something diabolical was interesting. And it makes you wonder what else kinds of crazy things they could do in future seasons if they were to do that. You know?
You know, it's kind of interesting. Is like I want to talk about the fifth game because all of the times like when you pair up with somebody, you're a team. Everyone's working
Hmm.
together, and this is the first time where the team is actually working against each other because everyone had to be
Right.
paired up in twos, and
Hmm.
everyone was like pairing up with their best friends, like the husband and wife,
Hmm.
the old man and the main character, and like the two girls that were kind of friendly with each other and stuff like that. Like everyone was talking about how they're gonna make sure that the other makes it out alive. We're gonna work together, and then after that they're told, oh my god, now you gotta one of y'all's gotta live and one of y'all's
Kill
gotta
each other.
die. You gotta figure it out. That kind of stuff. I thought that was like very heart wrenching, like in the sense of like
Yeah.
everyone is working thinking they're going to work together, but now they're going to work against each other, and they don't want that. And that would have been the one time right there where somebody should have spoke up and said, "Who wants to vote to not play anymore?" That could have been the one critical moment where maybe enough of the majority would be willing to opt out. So,
Hmm.
but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And another game where the majority probably would opt out is the glass one that we just talked about. Like,
Oh
had
yeah,
that been brought up, because that game was like from the moment the numbers were decided, at least it was also decided that there were only two or three people there that really had a chance to live. Right. Realistically, I know that there is a chance that the first guy gets all the glasses right, but it's a chance of like one in 100,000 or something crazy.
yeah.
You
And
just
the
got to
one
do
guy who was a
like
mathematician, he calculated like 2 to the 16th power or whatever. Like it's like that means I got
yeah,
1 in 30,000 chance of winning, and he's like, "Fuck it," and he just starts like running through and just dies.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But yeah, on that, the game that put the duos against each other. That was the first one um where it felt like, from that point on, it was where it felt like, oh, shit got really real now. Um
the most emotional, I would
and then we're
say. I think that one
yeah,
was the most emotional from the character deaths that
yeah,
happened because that was the first time they actually killed off main characters. You know what I mean?
yeah, exactly. And it was also interesting to see that woman, whose character I hated, by the way, she was so annoying, didn't get a pair for that thing, and everybody was just thinking she was just gonna get killed. And the moment she got dragged off the room, I told Leah, because we were watching together, I said, she's not gonna get killed, because so far every time they've wanted to kill somebody, they did it immediately, just like gun to the head, immediate shot. Like, these villains, these guys did not waste time. It was very like to the point, like, we're here to do a job, shoot, done. If they dragged her out of the room, that means that she's gonna stay alive. They're gonna do something with her, or she's gonna stay alive. And then she did. So there was something interesting there too. I actually thought about that fact a lot, because I was wondering, like, was there a way out? Like, was there a way out for some of the other games too? Like, if they was it ever established on the game where they were playing against each other in the pairs, that if they just didn't play, that they were both going to get killed? Was that a rule? I couldn't remember if that was ever established.
I don't remember either. Um, I think the rule is that you have to collect, or somebody has to have 20 marbles or something like that. I don't know. Well, actually,
No.
no, I take that back. Yeah, if you don't play the game, you get eliminated. It's part of one of the like little clauses. Like if a player refuses to play, then they're eliminated, which means they die. You know what I mean? So like,
Right.
you have to.
Okay.
If you have they have a 30-minute timer, so the winner has to be decided. Otherwise, you're both eliminated.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Because the way I was looking at it is like, I wonder if they were like playing with each other, but nobody ended up running out of beats, because I think the what they said was like, or
Marbles.
sorry, it's not beat marbles. There we go. Yeah, like whoever ends the timer with zero marbles gets eliminated. So like, if two people ended with like less than like, not the 20 marbles, but also not zero, like, could they both move on? That was something that I thought off. But I guess you're right. Maybe they would just get eliminated. There's no way to know. And I felt so bad for the Pakistani character, but he was also so gullible. Like,
Yeah,
I was like, dude, open your eyes,
he
like,
was so
open your
trusting.
fucking eyes. And And with the other character who ended up kind of being the ultimate bad guy in a way, like I mean, not really. I mean, the bad guy, I guess, is just running the game, but the bad guy amongst the people playing it. It's interesting how they kind of slowly gave us hints throughout the show that he was gonna be the one to do what it takes to kill everybody else, right? To get the prize. Because
Oh,
the
you're talking about his
first
best
hint we
friend?
got of that, yes, yes,
Okay.
the the first hint we got of that was in the very second game when he knew, like he knew what was coming, like his based on his like body language and stuff, the fact that he picked triangle, everything seemed to him that he figured it out, he had figured out,
It was
being a
honeycomb.
smart guy, what was going on. And he still let uh
His best
Gihan, I
friend.
guess, yeah, go and go to the umbrella way. Like he there's a moment where like he considers stopping him. He goes like, "Hey," and but then he lets him do it anyway. You know, so I feel like that was the first hint. Like this guy's gonna end up being an asshole. You know, this guy's gonna end up betraying the group. So that's where that was kind of established for me.
Yeah, that's true. It's almost kind of like, how do I put this? It's an interesting like dynamic how they all start off as like we're all equal and stuff like that, and like it just sort of like sees like the facade. I don't know if it's like let's say a facade because I think maybe in the beginning he even believed it too. To tell you the truth, I think that like
Right.
he his desperation got the better of him. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Like
I think
yeah.
there was an interesting thing too, where like they were trying to like make teams and be friendly to each other. But myself, as somebody watching the show, I was thinking like, there's no more than one person that's gonna walk away with that prize. So this is all pointless. You know, like you gotta know from the beginning that these people are gonna end up killing each other. You know what I mean?
You
Um,
know what I kind of wish that they did is like I kind of wish that they didn't kill people in between games, like the with the prison riot thing
mm,
that happened. Like I almost kind of wish
right, right, right.
that there should have been a rule where it's like you are not allowed to eliminate someone, you know, unless it's
Yeah.
within the
Well,
game. Like
you
when the
could tell that.
gangster guy, the guy that was like the most like the villain for most of the season, when he was killing when he killed that one guy because of like food, the guard
Mm-hmm.
should have went and just shot him and then just decreed you are not allowed to eliminate someone.
Right,
You know
right,
what I
right,
mean?
right, right. Yeah, I agree with that, and it's but it's interesting though. I feel like all of those things just kind of help solidify the fact that this was never fair. You know what I mean? Like it was never fair. It was just they were just fucking around. They just wanted to fuck with these people's lives and kind of take advantage of their desperation to create an entertaining thing for the people that were ultimately paying. You know, the sponsors, the VIPs, whatever they were calling them, the people that were betting on the sick game, right? And I love how the whole thing kind of paralleled um, the main character in the beginning betting on horses as well, right? Um, so I feel like the other, like I guess the criticism that I have of the show and the thing that kind of makes me refrain from just going full on out, like, oh yeah, this is a 10 or whatever, is I actually felt like a lot of the show was relatively predictable,
Really?
or that they played it safe. Yeah, the thing that caught me off guard the most was in the beginning, the fact that they let them go, and that then they came back. Like I didn't see that coming. I could have sworn the old man was gonna vote. You know, we all stay here, and to me that was the most obvious thing. They're all gonna stay in there and do the game. But the fact that they chose to do the plot line of like, no, they're gonna let them go, and these people are gonna choose to come back. That I thought was the most surprising kind of twist of the show, and obviously the twist at the very end with the old man too. But I feel like everything in between was decently predictable. Like I would often look at Leah and be like, all these people are going to survive because you know they got plot armor, so we're good. And then when they had to kill each other, I actually called all the wins. I said like, here she's gonna live, she's gonna die. Here he's gonna live, he's gonna die. Here he's gonna live, he's gonna
Talking
die.
about the
It was
duos, the
all right.
pairs.
Yeah, yeah, with the duos, like it was all right. I got all of them right. Because plot armor again. I was like, you know, the best friend, they're gonna use that till the end. That's gonna be the duality thing. You know, the main character with his friend, they're gonna have to kill each other. Like he's gonna live. Pakistani guy, bye bye. Sorry. Like the old
do you
man and him, old man's gonna die. You
do
know,
you think
like
that they could have done a better job of like making a bigger cast? I mean, it was already a big cast, but like
yeah,
they were relegated to background extras for the most part. But do you think that they could have brought more
yeah.
people to the camera and make a bigger ensemble to like, you know, make every
Yeah,
game more like heart wrenching. Where it's like, damn, I thought this guy was gonna be a lead, but now they're just dead on the first game or whatever.
right. Think about Game of Thrones and the fact that they're able to kill. Spoilers for Game of Thrones, I guess, but they're able to kill the main character in like the first season, and then they just keep doing that in future seasons and stuff like that, right? So it establishes that nobody's safe. So I almost kind of wish that in the beginning, like maybe in the very first episode, they could have had like another like two or three characters that they highlighted, like they gave some lines to, and we paid attention to that characters that stood out, and then they die on like this one dies on the first game, this one dies on the second game, this one dies on the third game, just so that it would have given us like that feeling of like these people are not safe, because I felt that they were safe the whole time until we got to the pairings, and then even on the pairings I was able to call out the ones that were still safe, and then like I said, like it was decently predictable. When we got to the glass part, you saw the numbers, like that they picked and what the game was. Once what the game was revealed, it was pretty obvious. Like, okay, well, these are the three, 14, 15, 16. These are the three ones that are going to get through. Everybody else is going to die here.
You
Like
know,
so that was my, yeah.
it's kind of interesting that if you think about it that way, yeah, it is predictable in hindsight, but like I don't know, I don't think I was feeling that it was predictable, at least for me, because here's the thing,
Mm-hmm.
and here's the thing that we didn't even touch about. There's actually subplots. And I think the
Yes.
subplots actually added more intensity because there's a subplot
Fair
of
enough.
the doctor cheating and finding out what the game is ahead of
Mm-hmm.
time and harvesting organs, and there was another subplot of a police officer who's investigating and trying to collect evidence to take back and find his brother. Also, by the way, he's trying to like do the. There's a like which, by the way, I've seen many a talk about like about the subplots about whether or not they should have even belonged. Were they even useful? Did they could have they have just been written out entirely and then like not affected because like that's a whole conversation to have. But I think for me, I think the subplots actually turned up the intensity, especially when there was like a lull in the middle.
Yeah.
They were at the forefront.
No,
Like
I like the subplots. Like I feel like the argument that could be made is like had the subplots been taken out, the final outcome of the story would still have probably been the same.
yes,
But I was happy the subplots were there because I just complained that I felt like a lot of the outcome of the games themselves were predictable. The outcomes of the subplots were not. Like I had no idea what was going to happen with the doctor guy. Like okay, how far is he going to go? How is this gonna happen, like, or the whole harvesting organ situation, like what is this gonna lead to, like that was the stuff that was the most, almost like the most interesting actually, and part of what kept me hooked, like trying to figure out what was going on, the whole thing with the cop as well, like everything, like trying to figure out who is the brother, like who is his brother, where is he involved, is he one of the main characters, or what's going on there, and then ultimately finding out that he's running the show, like, and
yeah.
all that stuff. Finding out that they've been running this thing for years and will continue to run it later on. Um, if anything, there was a lack of, like, if this is a one season show and it's gonna end here, um, there was a lack of. I guess I wanted to see the operation be taken down somehow. Like, there's a part of me that wanted to see the cop figure out a way to take down the whole thing, or the main character at the end, like use all his money to send a nuke on that freaking island or something. I don't know, like just like take down the boss. But there's a little bit of a beauty in the fact that they didn't. Like, there's like this open endness to it, like where I feel like even that is a little bit metaphorical, like that it's gonna continue on happening, unless
Actually,
somebody's able to do something about it eventually.
if the show okay, so there's two things. Number one, if there's no body, they're not dead. So like the brother is still probably alive. That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two,
True.
I think that if the show were to have been a one season like limited series thing, they would have had the main character get on the airplane. And so I think that if
Yeah.
you were to
Yeah.
do a second season with him turning around and getting not getting on the plane, he's intending to take down the organization. So
Yeah.
I think that
I
that's
feel like that
why
could be interesting.
I think that's what they're gonna do
Yeah.
for the second season. Like they're gonna bring it back and they're gonna be like reveal like oh my god, the brother's alive, he survived, and they're gonna show the part where he gets shot and dives off the cliff, but he swims to shore or
Yeah.
whatever. They're gonna do that little thing where they pay everything off, and it's gonna be it's like I know where the island is and I have money and resources. Let's work together. That kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So I think that
That
that's
would
what's
be
gonna
cool.
happen. Um, don't know if you wanna how they want to do a second season. Like, do you want to do a second season where it's like a whole new cast of characters that are playing a new Squid Games, and we sort of do parallel stories, or because like one of the things that you do about when happens with the Hunger Games is like when the Hunger Games the sequel happened and stuff like that, they had to do the quarter quo. They had to like raise the stakes by making a contest of champions. You know what I mean? Like it's not like you're gonna
Right.
do that with Squid
Which
Games
they could straight up just rip off the Hunger Games and do that because there was a winner every year and doing it for many years. It
since
looked
the
like,
'80s. Yeah.
but I hope they don't do that because I think that's cheesy. Honestly, I thought it was cheesy in Hunger Games. I think it would be um, even more cheesy if they did it on this show because it would look like they were ripping it off, right? So I wouldn't want them to do that. I think the way to make a second season for the show is you have a new plot with new characters that are playing the game again, but you don't spend as much time, like you go like more straight to the point, like maybe episode one in the middle of it, and then so like we don't need to get another introduction, see them like getting slapped in the face, the whole like origin story of them getting there. We can go straight to the point where they're already there, right? We got a new cast of interesting characters, and then um Gihan and the cop are the subplot on that season where it's happening like kind of behind the scenes. We get to see a little bit of it every episode as they're making some kind of plan to infiltrate. Maybe they're bringing in more people with them. They want to infiltrate and blow up the whole thing. And I feel like you can do both like parallel stories in tandem, and then maybe they're going to be able to communicate with the people that are in the game and they're going to help each other.
Better yet, Squid Games Europe, Squid Games South America. Like just do it, but like different regions, and then Avengers Assemble like after 5 seasons or something like that.
It does leave an interesting question of like, is that only happening in Korea or is this, a bigger thing?
I think it's
It's
worldwide.
honestly, it's crazy how organized their organization was. By the way, the logistics of everything they were doing, like the amount of bodies they had to get rid of and go through, like everything that they had to do,
Yeah,
it
the
like
number of people
organizing
on
all the games.
staff and on a
Yeah,
schedule and
like the
how
fact that they were able to get that many employees like working
how do you
that way,
apply? Like
yeah. Like everybody was so professional, you know what I mean? Like nobody is breaking any rules, nobody's scrolling through Facebook
no
in the
one's
middle of the
taking off their
workday. Like,
mask and
yeah,
everyone, no
exactly.
one's
Like,
speaking when
dang.
spoken to and all that stuff. It's like holy shit. It's just so regimented. It's almost unrealistic. It's almost like Illuminati level of like conspiracy kind of thing.
Yeah. That's the thing about the show. It's like it was almost kind of campy a little bit because it was like everything. Some of the stuff is so over the top with the unrealism and the stuff that they're doing. That it almost feels a little campy. Like all of the employees and the way that they behaved, I felt a little campy. But it was fun. It added to the mysterious nature of it. It made everything even more mysterious and suspenseful, and you're just like and off putting as well. Like it helped make everything off putting. Um, yeah.
So yeah, speaking of how ridiculous it is, like the set designs were actually practical for the most part. There was very
Oh,
little
really?
special effects used. They actually built that set with the
Dang.
crazy stairways and like it was supposed to remind you of that one painting where like the stairs are
Yeah.
like all the different orientations.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome. I was wondering, like how they did it.
yeah, it was like not very much blue screen. There was like a little bit of blue screen going on, mostly during the tug
Hmm.
of war. But they actually built the tug of war set where like it was actually on a raised platform and everything like that. So they actually did.
Hmm.
They did like a lot of times the actors themselves, we talked about behind the scenes, they were actually surprised by the scope and when they're stepping on set for the first time. So there's
Dang.
that going on. There's also like I said, I've seen many think pieces, a lot of like little like rewatches where somebody like a YouTuber said, "Oh, I found these little foreshadowing on the rewatch." Apparently, all the main characters got a foreshadowing of their deaths. So like the
Oh, that's
gangster,
cool.
he jumped off a bridge and died. You know, like with that fall, and then he
Hmm.
died on the bridge on the glass bridge. Uh,
Oh,
the
yeah.
best friend wanted to commit suicide in that bathtub, and he dies at the end by committing
Oh,
suicide. Uh,
that's
the
cool.
the Pakistani guy takes the guy's steals the guy's money and he gets his marble stolen from. What else? What else happened?
Okay.
But like basically all the character deaths were foreshadowed in like their little origin stories and stuff like that. They just sort of little thing right there. Also, there's a possibility that number one and number 456 that they're actually father son, like long lost. It's a possibility. There's
That's
like a little bit of like sprinkling
mm,
of like possible hints towards that. When he was
that's
talking
weird.
about in like the fourth game where he's like like this is the street I used to grow up in and whatever that kind of stuff, and then he makes like an offhand remark.
Hmm.
He's like, yeah, I kind of did that too or whatever, and then he was like the one part where he was like drinking the milk, and he's talking about I was like, can you have chocolate milk because I'm actually lactose intolerant and stuff like that. Like I can't drink this as a kid or whatever, and then he's like the old man said, he's like, yeah, I had a son that used to do that too. He was like, I used to spank him a lot, or something like that or whatever. So it's
Dang,
like
dang. Yeah, that's an interesting theory. I feel like that one feels like a little bit of a reach, but I would have to watch the theory to see everything that they found that seems to justify it. I did want to add one thing, and we could probably go for 2 hours on this show, but I am getting tired, and I got another podcast to edit and stuff, so I want us to end soon. But
yeah, I was about to
I
wrap
do
this
want to
up too.
say the ultimate twist with the old man being the bad guy. There are some twists that when they happen, you just kind of get pissed off, like, come on, like that's bullshit, But that twist actually, I felt made sense, and it was the good kind of twist, the type of twist that you look back and the twist itself ties the loose ends off the show, and it helped tie some of the loose ends of the show. So I actually enjoyed that twist because in the very first game, you can tell that the old man was like he's like running happy and that he's actually enjoying himself. And I was like, what the hell kind of psychopath is this person? And I feel like when you want to learn who he truly was and his motivation and everything, that makes so much sense. You know what I mean? Like that his behavior in the first game just makes so much sense.
And every single
And
game is a
behavior,
game that he played as a child. Is like, oh, I used to play this as a kid. Like every single one of them, he was
yeah,
reliving his childhood. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Also,
So,
fan theory is that
yeah.
it's rigged. He rigged the games to so he couldn't lose. So like, people were saying that he wasn't quite as green in the cameras and red light, green light, whereas everyone else was like fully highlighted green, and he
Oh
was like a
yeah.
little off shade, so it was like as if not target him. And then there was even like a little like people were talking about like, oh, what if his wrists weren't actually padlocked to the rope. So if he were to lose tug of war, he can easily undo the wrist stuff and not fall to his death in tug of war if they lose. So
Hmm.
like there was like these like little like things like people were talking about. I was like, man, he makes sure not to be able to die. And then also, of course, in the game when he does lose, he actually bows out willingly and doesn't get shot. And of course, they don't show it on camera. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
go on.
Yeah. Cool. No, that's it, and that makes sense. Overall, great show. I think people should check it out. I think I was able to talk about the reasons why I had mixed feelings about it. A few things that I wasn't super down with, but generally, I still think it's a recommend. I think I'll give it like I don't know, like somewhere between an 8 and a 9, maybe like an 8.5.
Fair
I
enough.
think that's where I'm at with it. With it,
Fair
yeah.
enough. Yeah, I still think it's like a 9.5 because I think it had a lot to say, especially towards the end where the old man was betting
Hmm.
with his life. He's like, I bet you that no one's gonna help that bum. No one cares. Like he has
Right.
such a cynical worldview in his characterization,
Right.
and
Right.
whereas
Right.
our protagonist, he's very hopeful. He's like, no, someone will help him, and ultimately
Yeah.
he was proven right, and the old man dies, and it's very ambiguous if he even saw that he was wrong. You don't know if he
Right.
dies being like rethinking his worldview or dies, validating his own worldview. You know what I mean? So ultimately, it
True.
doesn't matter, I think, but for him, since he's dead. But like I think it's really got a lot to say as far as between that and Parasite. I feel like South Korea has a lot to say about classism, you know,
Yeah.
and about
A hundred
poverty and,
percent.
and
A
stuff
hundred
like that and
percent.
money. So yeah, I don't know. Would you if you wanted to add to
And
that?
if you haven't watched Parasite, go watch that. That's my final thought.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, I'm glad we got to do the spoiler cast, by the way, Dan, because like I think if I were to just do impressions like I normally do, like on any given week, I would have been a huge disservice. This definitely warrants a full-on discussion. We talked mostly for like an hour about this show, and I think what's
Yeah.
what even worse part is like I feel like we left things out. I think there was more to say,
Oh,
but
there's so much.
yeah,
I mean to say we could have gone for another hour or even two, because like we didn't even talk about like the ending and like how all of that went down. We could have gone deeper into specific characters. We didn't even talk about the character of the girl, by the way, that was playing the game, who was like one of my favorite characters too in the show. So like there was a lot there to dissect and to talk about, and I feel like that ultimately is the top net positive of the show, is that like this show leaves you thinking and with stuff to talk about for ages with the people who watched it, if you want to,
agreed.
yeah.
Agreed. And so we encourage you guys to go and watch the show and be a part of the conversation. Like I was at work and then people were like in the because we use even though I'm at work in the physical office, there's still a lot of us that are working from home, and so we're in a group chat and like on the group chat, people are making idle side conversations about Squid Games and like, have you watched Squid Games? They're
Uh-huh.
like, yeah, girl, I'm on episode 4 and all that kind of stuff. Like, kind of
Yeah,
yeah. So just
yeah,
saying,
I get that.
just throwing that out there, and yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. So it's time to end. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Ready Play Movies. Remember, you can reach the podcast at readyplaymovies@gmail.com or on Twitter at Ready Play Movies. And you know, pretty, I'm pretty sure I'll be able to pull off a show on Tuesday for you guys on normal, regular recording time. So I'm on Twitter at Chakalaka88 and Dan.
At the Dan Lima.
All right, don't forget to subscribe, tell your friends about the show, and all that good stuff. See you next time.
See ya. Bye bye.